goal this evening, as mentioned, is wrap up of the annual financial audit for our June 30th fiscal year end. So this evening we'll provide a high-level overview of the annual audit, certainly address any questions that the board might have, and then talk about the second bound document, which is our management letter recommendation. So I'll go ahead and get started. If there's any time in between that you guys want to slow down and ask questions, we can certainly do that as well. First of all, I want to make sure the board is aware what an outstanding job the staff does preparing for the audit. It is a cumbersome process. We started actually back in June during that month of the fiscal year end. So we start with planning meetings, we come out for testing, we go through draft process. So a lot of back and forth coordination with staff, and everybody involved is always very cooperative, and the financials are extremely clean when we come in to be able to do our testing. So thank you for all your hard work. That's obviously indicated in our audit opinion. So if we flip to page 1 and 2 of the document, you'll see the library's audit opinion for the fiscal year ended June 30th. It is in fact a clean opinion, or what we call an unmodified opinion. So that is the highest level opinion we are able to issue. That means the financial statements as presented are materially correct. So obviously our approach to a financial statement audit is making sure that the numbers are accurate. In that process, we also do an assessment of the internal control environment, and we would certainly bring forth to board and management any internal control issues that were detected. I'm happy to report there were none. So again, a very clean audit process. If we flip just a couple of pages, you should see a section labeled Management's Discussion and Analysis. From the board's perspective, these 11 pages that are provided are probably one of the most important sections within the document. The intention here is really to provide an executive summary for the fiscal year. I know you see this once a year. There's a lot of numbers and disclosures that are required for governments within their audited financial statements. In these 11 pages, management, as the title indicates, has really tried to capture some of the key transactions for the year. So you'll find discussion on revenue trends for the fiscal year, expenditure trends, discussion of capital asset investments for the year, as well as long-term debt activity. So I won't go into detail, but I would encourage the board to read those 11 pages. As we take a look at some of the high-level results for the year, we're going to flip past our MD&A section to actual page 8. And the top of that page should be labeled Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balance. And you should see 5 financial statement columns provided. We'll start with our general fund, obviously the main operating fund of the library. If we go to the bottom of that page, third line up from the bottom, you're going to see a line labeled Net Change in Fund Balances. That is in fact our profit or loss for each fund for the fiscal year. So the general fund, you'll see, had a surplus of $63,782. Again, that third line up from the bottom. That was in fact after about a $260,000 transfer was able to be made into the special reserve fund. The idea being that then those dollars can be used for future capital needs and maintenance to the library facility. The debt service fund, that's really a fund that we have ins and outs, and typically we don't accumulate or have a big profit or loss for the year. So we have property taxes and interest income that help offset our principal and interest payments. Those principal interest payments relate to the building that we're sitting in now. So that is the long-term debt structure on the building. And then we have our capital projects fund, or special reserve fund. That is in fact where we're accumulating those dollars for future capital and maintenance needs. And that's where you'll see that offsetting $260,000 transfer that roughly came in during the fiscal year. Our non-major column, those are all of our special tax levy funds. There's detail provided at the back of the report, but those would be things like the IMRF fund, Social Security fund, etc. We call them non-major because from the audit perspective, they're just not material enough to be reported separately in their own column. But you'll see there we also had a $59,000 slight surplus in all of those funds combined. Okay. I want to point out the notes to the financial statement. So overall, all funds, we had about a $377,000 increase or net profit for the fiscal year. Okay. The notes to the financial statements you'll find on pages 10 through 30. So any of the supporting detail for the numbers that we just briefly walked through, you'll be able to find in those 20 pages. So discussion on capital assets, cash and investments, and long-term debt, as well as pension obligation through IMRF. Okay? So we're going to flip past the notes to page 33. And I just wanted to point out, we took a look at the general fund and we had a surplus within that fund, but I just wanted to show how that fund compared to the budget for the fiscal year. Obviously, the budget is set before the fiscal year starts, so I always consider that to kind of be our scorecard. What did we anticipate through that budgetary process, and then ultimately what were the results for the year? So if you take a look at page 33, again, third line up from the bottom, we have our overall profit that we just saw of the $63,000. But what was budgeted was actually a profit of about $5,000. So we did in fact exceed budgetary expectations for the year. The majority of that is really coming on the expenditure side of the equation. So just some overall cost controlling measures during the year, some things that were kind of budgeted and maybe came in under budget. And as we add up all those line items, they certainly can make a significant impact when it comes to being under that budgetary level. Okay. The last page in this document I want to point out is actually the last schedule provided on page 48 and 49. I always think this is interesting from board's perspective. It provides the last 10 years of property tax related information. So the top of that schedule will provide assessed valuations. This was obviously a good year because we've had a couple years now of trends of our EAVs increasing. So you'll see 2016 is at about $922 million, which puts us back to about our 2011 EAV values. Okay. And then you'll see the tax rates for the last 10 years as well as total dollar extensions. And our percent collected, always important, making sure we're hovering around that 100% mark, which certainly the library is doing so. Okay. Any questions on the larger bound document? Again, a very clean audit process. We really have nothing to report to the board this evening, but I'd be certainly happy to answer any questions. The smaller bound document, just briefly, we have in the current fiscal year just one, what I would call housekeeping type comment. It's really to make sure that management and the board is aware of a coming Governmental Accounting Standards Board pronouncement, or GASB pronouncement. GASB is our standard setting authority in the government world. Over the last decade, they have been very, very busy keeping us all on our toes as far as compliance related and reporting issues. So this coming fiscal year will be no different. We have a GASB standard related to post-retirement healthcare costs. So there is the idea that when we have retirees who piggyback on our health insurance plan, there is an overall increase to the employer as far as the cost of that. Traditionally in government, we've never measured that incremental cost and had to report it on the balance sheet. GASB has caught on to that. I always say we're about a decade behind the times, so we truly are a decade behind the times with regards to this. So they are tackling that concept next fiscal year for you guys. So we would be working with management over that coming kind of fiscal year to determine what is our potential exposure, is it material to the financial statements, gathering a bit more information over that next year. Okay. And we had one prior recommendation that I'm happy to report was fully implemented this year that really just related to kind of another housekeeping comment with regards to capital asset record keeping, just making sure we're timely updating those records. That certainly was fully executed this fiscal year, so we just wanted to provide the board the update that that has been implemented, and that comment would in theory then be removed next year completely. Okay.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Jamie or Joe? No? It's nice to hear confirmation that Joe and his staff are doing a good job.
They really are.
I think they are, but it's nice to know that, have the audits done and see that borne out. So
Little owls you have under you.
Excellent. Okay. So what's the next step for this then?
Typically just accepting the audit is kind of the step that you guys would take, so it's usually accepted and just placed on file. We go through a process then to get things filed with the state and those types of things. So.
Okay.
Historically, the board doesn't
hasn't voted.
There's no action
Yeah.
needed on the board?
Yeah, it's really just the acceptance that
Okay.
nobody has any significant changes, issues, questions
The official record will show that it was received and accepted.
discussed. Yep,
Discussed.
exactly.
Perfect, okay.
Yeah. Thank you. We appreciate the
Excellent.
opportunity.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Jamie.
Thank you.
All right. So that's the financial reports. So that's item 7. So number 8 is
7C.
7C, tentative form and ordinance approving and adopting amending, the annual budget, right, thank you. So we need to amend our annual budget appropriation. There was a typo in the,
There were a couple different things that were of concern that we, the only way to correct them was mainly typographical errors in the numbers, but the only way to correct that is by completely going through the process again. So-
okay, excellent.
So that's what we're doing. And this went to the Finance Committee that 2 weeks ago. Yes, 2 weeks ago. And there's no action required,
Okay.
but we wanted the board to see the amended document. And a notice has already been posted in the paper that the hearing will be on November 7th, which was the reason for the special meeting that we
Okay.
asked about. And that process will allow the public hearing and the approval of the amended annual budget appropriation prior to the regular meeting in November, at which time the board will have a public hearing and action on the annual levy. So that everything is right with the world at that.
back on schedule, okay.
At that point.
I know there's some timing issues that make it
Right.
important that we do that. Okay, do we need to read this evening into the record, or how does that?
No, the public notice in the paper notified people that this is available.
Okay,
We have a copy at the reference desk and in the business office, and that's part of the public notice that was published. And so at the notifying people of the public hearing and the accessibility of this information, and then at the public hearing, then we'll
okay.
have anybody who cares to come and comment as well.
Okay. So are we going to do, as a quick aside, are we going to do committee meetings that evening after the public hearing?
If there's a need, there may be a need for the services committee meeting.
There will be,
There actually is no particular need for
for the finance?
finance that night.
Okay, unless something changes, okay.
Yeah, we'll be on track that evening. The special meeting will actually take care of
Okay.
finance issues.
Okay, so maybe we'll.
If there's anything else, we can certainly address that as well.
Okay. All right, and we'll need more than the usual, so if you two and maybe Diane, we just need one more person, we'll need 4 people to a quorum, so if you can show up for a little bit for that, that'll be good. Okay. I thought that you had responded.
For the special.
For the special meeting.
Oh, right.
I think everybody said they were available. that
Okay.
evening.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, so if you can show up, great, just as long as we've got a quorum.
Be
Okay,
here.
excellent, thanks. All right, so now we're done with item 7, correct?
Correct.
All right, number 8 is board education. You've got an item in our packet here, trustees fact file.
Yes, this year, as was noted, the last requirement for this year relates to trustees, and the request was to review the first 5 chapters of this document this year, and in the next 2 years, we'll be asked to work our way through the whole document. Much of what's in here just relates to things that you are doing, so I didn't prepare a summary of the first 5 chapters, but we can certainly have any discussion or questions if you wish.
Who's requesting these reviews?
Well, this is part of, the state library is part of the per capita grant processes. This is one of the requirements that libraries boards review this document, at least the first 5 chapters. So we included this in here for discussion purposes. I think everyone may have gotten a copy of this in the binder when you first joined the board. as
Yeah,
well.
this was in the trustee handbook.
Yeah. So it isn't really new to this board, so that's why I didn't take a lot of time to summarize.
Sure. Okay.
But if there's any questions or things that you want to talk about, this is the time.
No questions.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you, George. All right, President's report. I have nothing to report other than the fact that I did not make the services committee last 2 weeks ago, and I appreciate the fact that you guys were able to do that without me. Or the finance committee, and we canceled the services, so thank you both for that.
Back and forth motions between Mike and I.
Yes. It's a little weird when there's just two of you.
I second, no, I second, no, I second.
Yeah. Robert's Rules of Orders. Okay. Any good news or comments from the board on anything? Any programs you saw here, or we can talk about those as we come up with them too. But.
I went to the new Lyceum last night.
Oh, great. How was it?
It was very good. It was African-American athletes in the Olympics.
Oh, right.
You know, we all know Jesse Owens, but this was a lot prior to that. And there's a professor from Northern Illinois University, and that's his research.
Interesting.
And it was very good.
Well attended, I take it? Like usual?
It was average.
Okay.
It ran into the city council meeting,
Mhm,
which dealt with the Santana building.
Mhm.
Oh.
So I have a feeling a lot of active Batavians
Yes.
may have been otherwise occupied.
Almost anything bumping up against that event
Yes.
doesn't draw much attendance anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But the attendance was certainly good.
It was good.
Okay.
And like I said, it was very, very interesting. And his next area of research is going to be on the Negro League baseball.
Oh, baseball? Wow. I'd be interested here too. Maybe I'll come back.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right.
I'd like to say a quick thank you on the heels of the audit to all the staff who've worked so hard to keep the budget in check. That's a significant savings over the year from what was planned, and I know that's not easy to do. So thank you very much to those of you who are here
Thank you.
and elsewhere.
Thanks, Kate. And thanks to the staff. All right. Correspondence and communications.
There was nothing in the packet. I did want to mention that our technical services manager, Carrie Halter, has been working for the past year, actually, on a working group with Rails, the library system, reaching across on the library system, cataloging working group, and she was invited to be the chair of that, which she accepted, and they filed their final report to Rails yesterday evening, and it was accepted with unanimity and much praise for Carrie and her colleagues on that group. And it basically was looking at all the different approaches to cataloging amongst the various consortia. It's focused on consortia. Carrie was the only representative from Link, so I'm very proud of that. And did a great job, and she said she's very happy that work is over. So wanted to mention that on her behalf. We're very proud of her.
That's great. All right. Directors and librarians reports.
Well, the written report is in the packet. And we included a mention of last night's lecture because the packet was going out before that, so you'd have that. And really the only significant thing I wanted to point out was the community-based placement program. This again is from Carrie's department, Technical Services, and we have been participating in a really nice community collaborative effort with the school district to host students who need to work on vocational skills, in some cases special needs students, with local businesses and organizations. And so we have a student again for, Carrie estimates this is the 6th consecutive year that we have done this, and the student's going to work 1 hour a week to help us withdraw older magazines for our annual magazine exchange in February. But it's a real opportunity to work with the schools and to give students an opportunity for some real life work opportunities and skills. And And it's at no cost to us, but I think it's a great benefit to the students in the program, so we're very proud to be part of it.
It's great. So it's one student?
It's just one student, and the situation usually is such that that's what an organization will take at one time, is one student.
Do they earn school credit for that?
You know, I didn't ask Trey that question, but I believe they do. There is a level of credit
Yes,
involved. And,
they do get some school credit. for-
Like an internship?
Yeah.
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 Sometimes,
Internship.
yeah. Sometimes the students are on their own, depending on their skill level, and sometimes there is a faculty member, staff member that works with them on this, on the projects, and it's been a good experience for us. And technical services really provides an opportunity in a quiet environment for students to learn some skills and to practice some skills.
I had a question on the number of unique visitors to the website, and I was just wondering, there's an increase of 53.1%. I'm just wondering, are you changing the way you're counting, or is that really?
No,
No?
that's the numbers. I don't know, Stacy, has this conversation come up between you and Hans on this? No? It's a remarkable jump from
It
last year.
is.
Yeah.
And then the decrease, you know, in the number of page views.
And that's just the homepage. So
Right.
so I think we have, the visitors to the website could be any one of the different pages. So I think
Mhm.
that's probably who's in there.
Well, that's wonderful.
And we can
Good
drill
data.
down into, we checked this recently, and we actually can access and/or produce statistics for any of the pages. We haven't really identified particular pages of interest. I know that some that are of interest to Stacy's department may involve the Reader's Advisory pages. Yeah. In fact, that's in your report, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, I think from time to time, I probably should pop some of those additional pages in here just so you can see some.
And it just caught my attention because it was such a big.
Yeah.
Yeah, difference,
big
yeah.
increase.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, without requesting anything that would be more work for anybody on staff, is if there's an opportunity to look at these in graph form as trends,
Mhm.
and not just the circulation and unique visitors to the website, but also maybe some of the other reports. When I was looking at, I think it was maybe the budget report, and in terms of kind of where we're spending as of September or year to date, and how does that compare with where we were September of 2016 against different categories? Are we on track with spending the same amount in terms of memberships, bringing in different revenues or expenses? So trends tend to at least help me understand where we are relative to past performance, as opposed to just point in time stats.
We can certainly pull some things together for you.
Just so that I think, at least for myself, I can be of more service to the conversation because I don't know what I can do as a trustee to act on any of this or provide recommendations unless I know where we're going up or down in any of the categories.
Right. The one curious thing I will mention about the budget, and it might be interesting to see how that looks graphically. Unlike a lot of business models, we don't forecast revenue and expenditures like on a monthly cycle. Many of our expenditures tend to be clustered. I think if that's the right way to put it. Joe, would you say like a lot of maintenance contracts renewed all at the same time? Materials sort of go in waves, so it's, 1 year we might have a big wave in September. That wave might be toward the end of October, like for books or something like that. It's so it'd be interesting to see on a monthly basis. Year to date compared to the previous year to date may actually show us something that will smooth some of that out,
Yeah.
which is I think maybe what you're going for.
Yep.
But I think like a big increase, like that 53% increase, if you were to graph that over time, you would see that huge spike, and you wouldn't have to be.
Right.
Yeah, last month it was.
Visual is good.
There was actually a large increase last month, and I think we had a typo in last month's director's report, because it was like a double-digit increase, but I think we
What's the digits?
slid the decimal point over one, probably because we didn't recognize that this is like off-the-chart increase, but yeah, something clearly is attracting people to the website that wasn't attracting people to the website a year ago, so we can, see if we can't, figure out what that is, and it may be tied to, we could look at what particular pages, pull some data to see where that's,
The traffic's going.
where the traffic is.
I mean, and it's a very positive thing. I mean,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
wonderful to see an increase like that.
But that may tell us where to focus
Efforts on
steps.
building
yeah.
that website or revamping it
Yeah.
too.
And
There
on
is
the-
an interest on the staff level in terms of refreshing
Right.
website, which usually has a price tag attached.
Sure.
So, but there is an interest, because we've had the same basic design for, 10 years, 7 years. Not much longer, because I got here 12 years ago.
I think it was 2008.
Okay. So we're talking, that's 9 years. Yeah.
On the subject of data visualization, now that we have the audit report complete, is there anything by way of a short annual report that the library develops for the entire district, for just citizens of Batavia to see? And I'm thinking along the lines of what the Park District does, which they put together a very easy 4 to 5 page visual, graphically oriented report on where they spend their money, where they get their money, where they spend their money, the programs and priorities. Does the library do anything of that nature?
We typically have not. 2 to 3 years ago, we actually did something akin to that for a neighbor's article. But actually, historically, we haven't done that. I think we put a lot of effort into the state report, which is dull as dishwater, as my mother used to say. And but we could certainly look at that idea. There is a certain value in that kind of marketing, I think. And I've seen the Park District one, which is very colorful.
Yeah. And not that it necessarily needs to be something that gets mailed out to everybody, but if there's something that could be available, just
On the website.
developed
Put it
on
on
the
the
website.
website,
Yeah,
right.
it's particularly if we
Right.
get into areas where we need to communicate more proactively with our constituencies because of long-term planning and needs.
Well, and it's a way to tell the story, like to what Kate was saying. We could put the snapshot of the budget to actual and show that we only budgeted reserving for 60,000 and we ended up doing 260,000.
Right.
And we still had a surplus. It's a very good report to want to highlight this year. I think
Yeah.
we should caution against, if nobody's asking for it though, I don't know how much we want to give away the farm type of thing.
Yeah.
If there's an interest, and maybe that's where we go with it, and maybe it's just available.
Well, the
It's a-
community
it's a-
engagement
but-
process will give us
Right,
an
if
opportunity.
there's like an
In fact,
interest
some of
for
these
it.
topics
Because some years might not be
will
as
be
good.
built into our, right.
Into the
yeah,
community engagement.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice to have that graphical representation for
Mhm.
the community engagement.
Well, that's what I was thinking, there's actually a dual purpose going on here, because we have an opportunity, we have maybe a stronger purpose. A lot of the savings was personnel attrition, but that doesn't mean we didn't save money, in the course of the year.
Right. Well, we made some choices last year to not do some internal projects
Right.
to save money.
That's true. That's true.
For the bigger cost projects that are coming up, so.
So the conjunction of that opportunity with the other, with this large project we're working on actually is sort of like a hand in glove kind of opportunity.
Sure.
So even in years where maybe the reports are not as glowing, there may be benefits to the community to communicate that. with
Yeah.
them
Mhm.
And say, hey, we're having some problems with, it's a really snowy winter, we spent a lot more money on snow removal than we thought we would.
And a lot of that is in these
Right.
first 11 pages
Right.
of the audit, the MD&A analysis. And that,
Okay.
like, what she was saying is our opportunity to write this. It's management's discussion. It's not an audit. I mean, we could tell whatever story, right, Joe? So I think these 11 pages is really, it's already got the summary of what we're kind of looking for.
Mhm.
But I don't know if there's a way, that it gets kind of
Yeah.
if we just had that available.
And my only frame of reference for this discussion is what the Park District puts together. And what I liked about that is that it's very simple, and it's in that spirit of transparency that I think most people just expect, whether it's for the private sector or the public sector now. So,
Well, we can send you copies of what we did for neighbors, which had some graphical information and some other things in it, and to give you, to get a sense of, is this the kind of thing, is this the direction you're looking for? That we already have that sample. And then I've seen, like I say, I've seen the Park District, which is a good model, I think.
And this could be something that the finance committee takes on as something where we can kind of think through that too. It doesn't need to be decided now, but.
Sure. I think you're right, as we move forward with community engagement, being able to easily show where we are, where we've been, where we're headed, I think there's positive benefits.
In a real simple format.
Yeah.
I think between the finance committee and the outreach committee, this is something that we could even not put the burden on staff, but try to develop.
Figure out what we want, and then instead of having them come up with a bunch of different ideas, if we can give them some.
Well, that's what I was thinking, should have some samples of what we, the kind of things we've done and what the numbers may be saying, and then, looking at how do we tweak this to get to the message that we're trying to.
Okay. All right. That brings me to another question. Is this financial report, is that kept at the front desk if patrons want to come in and look at that?
Wouldn't be at the front desk if, nobody's ever asked for it before, but now that I've said that, we'll have half the community looking for it.
Yeah.
So we can make a copy of the, available at the reference desk. That's where we usually have things for public inspection.
Or, I mean, they can just come in and ask for you and can see it, or for Joe and can see it, right?
Oh, yeah,
too?
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure how, I mean, obviously, it's something that's available if somebody wants to see it.
Absolutely.
They could FOIA it to get, would be one way, but I was just wondering if it was generally just sat out somewhere for people to look at, like some of our other reports are typically.
Everything. And we have years of these available if people want to see them. It's just, if they
Yeah,
want to see them.
if they want to see them, yeah, exactly.
We actually have.
Trouble this would be good.
Yeah.
We'll have city, we've had, when the city is doing like a comprehensive plan, they'll often, or the police annual report, they'll send a copy over for us to have available for public to ask for.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
I don't know how often the public actually asks for those things, but
Yeah, it's important to have them
we
just in
we
case.
graciously, we graciously make these things available.
Yeah,
for the public.
okay.
Roll
All
the
right.
public library. That's good.
That's right, that's part of our mission, I think, is to provide, public.
Right. Okay,
Very good, thank you.
well, thanks for that discussion. Hi.
Hello.
I see you have some Born to Read bags.
All kinds of things tonight. I had to make a couple trips. First little poster I'll send around are some of our fall activities that we've been doing. I thought you might be interested. We had a couple activities on the Children's Day off school, kind of a play, and we had Llama Llama here. So just, it's always kind of fun to see children engaged in some of the programs that we're doing. I did decide to bring a Born to Read bag today for the benefit of the new members of the trustees who maybe haven't heard about it for years and years and years, like some of the other members of the trustees. Born to Read was started in 2008. Maureen Jakubowski, then board trustee, and myself, along with a committee of community members passionate about early literacy, developed the Batavia Born to Read program based on a similar program in Naperville, Illinois. It was with seed money from the library's per capita grant and funding from other local organizations and individuals and agencies. Born to Read was launched in April of 2009. And the goal continues to be as it was when we first launched it, to educate parents, to get books into the hands of parents, new parents with new babies, and to educate them about the importance of shared early reading experiences. So I'm going to send around the poster that kind of sums it up for you. Since 2009, we've given away 396 Born to Read bags. Free books
and early literacy information to families with new babies in Batavia, the library district, the school district, and the city of Batavia. We've also sold 75 bags. We sell them at cost at the checkout desk for anybody who wants to buy them for maybe a gift, a baby shower gift, or somebody who's having a new baby out of the area. And so we've sold 75 bags. Each bag includes 7 books and various early literacy information, and it is available in Spanish and in English. So I'm going to send those around. If you've seen them, you go ahead and pass it on. But if you haven't seen them, please look at them. And they are extremely well received. We do keep a little listing of the families who have received them, because we ask that each family only receive one. Because really the intent is to get families started on those early literacy, reading, and building early literacy skills. So once a family has done it with one baby, that should be a natural if the second and third one comes along. So it is a 1 bag per family. Bags are available in Spanish and English, as I mentioned. They can be picked up here at the library. We've made them available through committee members. At Batavia Apartments, we work with the community relations person there. We have several members of the committee who are also educators in the school district, who at, say, AGS, the early intervention, the preschool down there, make connections with families in that way. But to be honest with you, the best way to PR Born to Read is through people. So if you know of somebody, I'm going to send around little postcards. If you know somebody in your neighborhood who maybe just had a baby, ask them if they've had a Born to Read bag. And if they haven't, send them to the library. And as a reminder, feel free to give them one of our postcards. So if you'd like to take one, you're welcome. English on one side, Spanish on the reverse side. But we always are trying to get the word out about Born to Read. It is a fabulous program. It was a great start here at Batavia, and really when we present these, we often hand them out when we start our new story time session for our baby story time programs. Our 1,000 books is a good way to get families, hey, have you done 1,000 books, and have you gotten a Born to Read bag if they have a little infant. It's just the feedback from patrons and families are just really excited about those books. And
before the HIPAA laws, libraries who did this in the past could get information from the hospitals and things, but that's no longer available to us. So the community committee under the leadership of Joanne has really explored a lot of different options to identify.
There's no way to get those postcards into like their little goodie bags from the hospital?
Well, the hospital back in the day, they printed the name of new babies in the newspaper.
Right.
They don't do that anymore. Tricky thing is we are doing funding. We do we have to fundraise for this. Batavia Rotary Club has made donations, Batavia Mothers Club, the Hanson Furnace Foundation we've written grants to. And the thing is hospitals will not put just a card in a Batavia mom's bag. So if it goes to the hospital, it has to go in everybody's bag. And so our funding would not allow us to give out bags across the Tri-Cities. We just wouldn't be able to support that. So we do the best we can and just keep getting out information. We periodically put it in the Neighbors magazine as well. But like I said, word of mouth is always the best thing. We had one committee member come in. She said, we just had 2 babies on my block. And she grabbed bags right away and she took them out to the new babies on their block. So
I can't remember, it's been 13 years since we moved into town, but does Batavia do anything like a welcome wagon?
There is one. It has done various things in the past, and we've talked to her. We need to communicate again with her. We hadn't developed the postcards yet. Those are relatively new. Sometimes they don't know if there's a baby until they get there, sure. But we have to reach out to her again. We just had a committee meeting last week, and so every year we talk about new ideas and things that we can do to expand that, but we'll have to reach out with her again.
I think it incorporates Batavia and North Aurora.
Okay, and so that's, we'd have to watch that
Yeah.
then too.
Do we put these in the new patron packets?
I don't know if we have them in the new patron packet. We are giving them out when we have families that come in.
I know the Friends participate in the, I guess Jennifer Zach is in
Like
charge
the
of
welcome
the,
wagon.
yeah. It's not called Welcome Wagon,
No.
is it? But it's, yeah, so,
Same concept, but
Right,
it's Batavia and North Aurora. And so,
And the Friends recently, about a year ago, put a coupon that we now are including in the Born to Read bag for a free book from their sale. So it's a good way to publicize the Friends too. And Friends were one of our sponsors as well. So I just wanted to share Born to Read with you. We are always coming up, if you have an idea of a suggestion, we've tried to go, to the schools and go through the teachers and present what Born to Read is. But like with anybody, like with patrons who come in and say, hey, when did you start closing early on Fridays? It's always good to get the information out there time and time again. So a little promotion for Born to Read once again. So.
about 1960, I think.
Yeah, we started closing at 5 on Fridays. Yeah. That question comes up periodically. This month we are also doing our bookmark contest, Fall into Reading. So if you have a 1st through 5th grader, they're welcome to submit a bookmark design for that. And we have 4 big events coming up within the next few weeks that I wanted to bring to your attention. Batfest on October 28th. Hope for nice weather because we'll be out in the reading garden then with our fall stories, weather permitting. On November 10th, we have our annual late night at the library. It's an after-hours event for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Very, very fun, fills up very fast. Late night at the library. It goes from 6 till 9 p.m. It's the one event, after-hours event we plan for that age group, and then we have generally a middle school one in spring. So it's a great program. This year our theme is an international theme, so we'll do activities, a scavenger hunt. We have a performer coming as well. Our preschool fair, we're doing once again with the Geneva Library District. We've been partnering with them for a number of years to bring representatives from Batavia and Geneva preschools to one location for families to come and look. And we generally have at least 100 people at that event seeing the different preschools. And as I mentioned in my board report, we are once again, is this year 19 already? 18, only 18 years. Participating in holiday readings at Celebration of Lights. And every year we've been fortunate to have a member of the Board of Trustees read something. So if anyone is interested in doing that, let me know and we'll add you to the list as our guest reader for the evening. It goes from 6:15, story time is going to be from 6:15 till 7 o'clock that evening. And we're in the Depot Museum, so you don't have to be sitting outside in the cold or wet, whatever the weather is that night. So that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Joanne. It's great to see the Born to Read things, the book bags, because it brings back memories of getting out of those and reading all of those books with my kids.
Over and over and over?
Yes, a lot. In fact, I was just going through the bookshelf the other day and moving some things around to make room for more books, and I came across quite a few of those, so we still have them. Great. All right. Anything else for Joanne? Stacy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. 3 items. We had a new Lyceum lecture last night, which went very well. We were pleased with the presentation. We have our next one coming up, before you know it, December 11th, 7 o'clock. Thomas Armstrong is going to give a presentation called Civil Rights Freedom Rider. And it's an account of his own experiences as a freedom rider during the 1960s in the Civil Rights Movement. He's the co-author of a book called Autobiography of a Freedom Rider. So he's written about this and spoken about it, and he's going to be here December 11th. We're looking forward to his presentation. Another item, if you look at the list of programs, we've changed the wording of our computer coaching sessions to technology coaching sessions. And that's simply to communicate to people very clearly that it's not just computers that our technology assistants provide individualized coaching sessions on. Because if someone comes in with say an iPad or a smartphone or an e-reader or some other device that a loving family member gave to them and they don't know how to use it, they can sit down with one of the technology assistants. They'll set up an appointment and spend an hour together going over how to use that device. So we changed it to technology coaching sessions just to make that a little bit more inclusive of all types of technology. And finally, this is not in the report because it just happened after this was already printed. This past week, Michelle Marcel and I set up an Instagram account for the library. Michelle's our promotional services coordinator. We sat down and got that going. There are only a handful of posts so far, but if you're an Instagram user, you can find us at BPL Batavia. You can also discover us by searching for Batavia Public Library, those 3 words. But BPL Batavia is our handle on Instagram, so you can follow us there.
Great.
Someone beat us to Batavia PL. Either New York or Ohio. They're not even using it. They just have it.
They
Just have it saved.
Squatters.
That's right, they're squatters.
You're gonna sell it to you for.
That's right.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Stacy. Did anybody have any questions for Stacy? Okay. It's item 12 then. We have committees and official representation reports. Committee engagement for the committee of the whole.
On October 4th, we had the first introductory meeting for the potential members of the facilitating team, and we had 22 or 23 people show up at that meeting. It was very well attended.
Nice.
Very high percentage of the invitations. And out of all the other people on the list, everyone had responded saying they were interested, they just had something else going on. So it was a very high percentage. After the first meeting, 2 people decided it was more of a commitment than they wanted to make. And a third person who was not at the first meeting decided that based on the information we were providing, this probably wasn't for her. So we've lost only 3 out of a potential 30 people, if you count Joanne and 6 staff members. So very high level of interest in this and a very good session. And the next session is tomorrow night back at Calvary Episcopal Church because for 2 reasons. One, Father Mike offered to host it, and second, there's no room in the inn over here. We have activities in all of our rooms, which is good news. You know, it's exciting. So I've invited everybody who was invited to the first one, and we will continue the process. And,
How often will that group meet?
It's got meetings scheduled tomorrow night and November 1st. The idea to really get organized. You know, the group will elect its own co-chairs, anywhere from 2 to 4 co-chairs to community co-chairs, and also select some branding, name, and related activities like that. And in the process leading up to the first community engagement session with the public. It's a difficult time of year, so there was some debate at the last meeting about whether it was appropriate to try to hold a session yet this year because of the committee did not highly favor it, although there was some mixed opinions since then via email from committee members, and I'm sure we'll discuss that tomorrow night. But the most we could possibly do is probably one a week or 2 after Thanksgiving, because otherwise you're right into the Christmas event. So we may not have our first community engagement session until after the first of the year, worst case scenario. But Rod Wright has informed me that that's not a problem. It's just, it's just timing, So the group seems very interested. Wonderful mix of ages and professions and gender and everything else. So we're very excited about where this is going.
So the meeting you had 2 weeks ago, you've got one tomorrow night. Are there outputs from those meetings? There
will be.
Okay.
At this point, Rod told me that at this stage they're not really keeping notes because this is really introductory leading into organization, and then once the activity really get underway, there'll be more than and the main output will be, in fact, the community engagement sessions.
And will the full board be able to see any documentation and notes, action items as that committee progresses?
I would say probably yes. Again, the primary outputs that will be shared, I think, were intended to be the community engagement pieces. What topics, and what the results of those are. And the idea is ultimately everything will come back to the board. So I'll ask Rob more details on that. Part of it is the facilitating team meetings are not, in fact, open meetings per se. They were designed to be really roll up your sleeves working type sessions to plan the community engagement sessions, which will very much be public, open meetings inviting the whole community. So, but the board we'll keep the board apprised every step of the way. Joanne is your representative. Do you want to add anything?
I was just going to say, as part of this reporting process, whenever there's a meeting, whenever we have a meeting, we can be reporting back. It might be that there will be requests from the facilitating team to the board for information. In fact, that was one of the questions that one of the members asked, was like, can we get some information from the board? And so, you may be
In general, was there
servicing.
specific information?
It
or
was
that
very
just a
general.
Okay.
It was, the first meeting really was Rob Wright explaining, what this whole community engagement process is.
You saw a lot of that at the retreat.
Right, kind of what we, yes.
Yeah.
He gave an expanded,
Yeah.
a largely expanded version
Right.
of what you saw at the retreat. And then we had to spend a certain amount of time on introductions.
Right.
And because the part of it is getting to know one another, because the team itself has to decide,
Who their leaders are going to be.
That's right.
Right. And so it was really very introductory. And so, I guess that's what there is to report at this
Sure.
point. Tomorrow night, I think we're supposed to come up with branding, naming the activity, and choose, as George said, choosing co-chairs.
Did you get a
And
sense?
possibly coming up with topics.
Oh. Did you get a sense that the folks that were invited understood the objectives and the mission that they're entrusted with before they get to a branding exercise? Do you think everybody's on the same page as what they're trying to accomplish as a group? Because they're moving to branding pretty quickly,
Right.
right?
Right.
So do you get a sense that they really
I
understand?
did. There were questions, it was a very lively group. It was wonderful. And I thought that the questions they asked were those kind of clarifying questions.
Okay.
So I think when they left, they did pretty much, understand.
And it may take this meeting and the November 1st meeting to pin down some of this. I think I saw a preliminary agenda just today, in fact, from Rod. The final one, I think, is coming out tomorrow for us to copy. And after sort of testing attendance, participation, to see who is still, moving forward with this, there's a sort of a brief refresh on the very topic you're asking about, Mike, the objectives and the purposes, to make sure everybody's on the same page. So I think it's a matter of continuing to test the notion, to make sure everybody is. And nobody seems shy about asking questions.
George said a nice mix, ages, genders, like you said, occupations. I think we have a
People from their 20s up to
Right.
retirement, and it was just very, for Batavia, it was a very eclectic mix. Because I'm used to seeing a little bit more homogeneity, if that in fact is a word, in terms of what group sort of shows up at different, activities in town. Although everybody comes to festivals and things like that, but it was for this kind of planning meeting, it was just a really nice, and it was not the same faces that you always see, which was one of the objectives, was to bring new people into the mix. And I think that's why we had such a high attendance and a high expression of interest. It's like one person's like, I need to, change. The first time around, it was like one person was you know, I'm having trouble finding a babysitter, but I'm really working at it, and she finally found a babysitter so she can come to the meeting, and when I was like, you know, I'm rearranging my work schedule, like, you know, so it's like, I'm thinking, wow, it's like.
I heard several people, I mean, they were like honored to be asked.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I think.
Very high level of interest, yeah.
It was people who maybe haven't been that involved or haven't been asked to serve on committees, so.
Oh, because one of the ways we found people is we all suggested names to.
Right.
We asked for nominations from selected staff, the board members, and selected community members who were very active, you know, the city administrator and people like that, and we came up with a big list.
Big
Yeah.
list, wasn't it? It was
Yeah.
hundreds.
Yeah, it was a lot of people.
Well, and it's, you know, I think there's a lot of people out there that are willing to help the community, but if you just put out a broad statement, can you help, you're not gonna get answers. But if you put out a focused question, say, can you help us with this? You're much more likely to get positive
And the
responses.
invitation was very specific.
Right.
Yeah,
Can
and so
you
that's
come on
great.
this night at
This
this
night,
time?
and this is what, a brief, few sentences, and this is what community engagement is. The library board, you know, is begun this process and would like you to participate. It was like very detailed and specific, and people seem to react well to that. And,
Maybe after the 10, 18, and 11-1, like, planning meetings, would it be appropriate if some board trustees sent a note out thanking them for their involvement in this? Because it is gonna be a significant amount of time. And it is, you know, it might, like, once we kind of get the final group and we see that these 22 people came back to the next 3 meetings,
Mhm.
would it, I mean, it would just a quick email from like a couple trustees, I think, would go a long way.
Right.
Say,
Right.
thank you, this is a board initiative, and,
It's good to be appreciated.
yeah,
Right.
it's just, it goes a long way, just a personal note, it's only 22, right?
Yeah, we can provide a list of the names and email addresses.
Right.
Or even,
Or even-
maybe we can write a letter.
I was gonna say,
I'm happy to
yeah.
sign those.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
We can, I agree, it's important to let people know they're appreciated when they're helping us with this. Okay.
George, when we get to those larger community meetings that the facilitating committee is planning,
Mhm.
are there any Open Meetings Act concerns that we would have as the board if all of us wanted to show up at some
Well,
of these?
all of you certainly could show up at those.
Okay, because they're posted, because there's an agenda.
Exactly, and they wouldn't, and they're not actually board meetings per se, and the group of 7 trustees wouldn't actually be discussing amongst themselves, you know, action for the library. And the library would be discussed, but you wouldn't be involved in that level of discussion. And even if 2 of you are at the same table or 3 of you are at the same table, the discussion would in fact be part of this planned open meeting.
Perfect.
And those meetings will in fact have notes that come out of each one, because the idea is just to report back to the community from those meetings, so.
I think, Kate, you were talking more about the facilitating team meetings, right? Or were you talking about the community engagement meetings?
No.
Not the facilitating team, the
The
actual
community
community
engagement meetings.
engagement
Okay.
meetings.
Okay.
I think it's appropriate for us to not be in the facilitated committee meetings. We want it to be a community-driven effort.
Mhm.
And those of us representing the library have been laying back a little bit. Because we don't want someone to, you know, be looking at Joanne or looking at me or looking at Joanne, and before they, you know, with a questioning look on their face when they're saying something. And nobody is, which is good. We picked, the vetting group picked a group of folks in town that, you know, really willing to, I think,
Jump in.
express their opinion, and yeah, that's great.
That's great.
We're very excited about the process, and if any of the members are watching this right now and hearing yourselves being discussed, we are very excited that you're participating, and thank you very much.
All right, it's item B, standing committees on facilities. Joanne?
Yes, we met and we discussed the capital assets plan. And as part of that capital assets plan, I mean, that's going to be on the agenda later. We decided to bring it to the full board.
Okay.
And if
There
I
were a
put the
few-
wrong committee name next to it, I'm changing it right now.
There were-
This facility.
A few questions that we
Okay.
that we had. As part of that, though, as part of the meeting, we did have a report from Pam Weber on the RFID system. And we can talk about that as part of the capital assets as well.
Okay. Finance?
We did have a meeting, and we discussed a couple things that was on the consent agenda that we didn't find necessary to bring to the full board. We also discussed in more detail the changes to the budget and the reasoning for the error, which was highlighted during the levy calculation. And it really, what I understood it to come down to is that we just didn't want to leave money on the table. So we wanted to make sure that that calculation gets corrected, and that's the reasoning for kind of that amended budget. We also had a brief discussion only about the insurance policies, which I think is also coming up. We'll talk about next after the committee discussion. And that was really it.
Okay. Thank you. No outreach committee and no services committee. Batavia Public Library Foundation. With Diane not being here, does anybody else?
Well, I attend those meetings, and discussion focused quite a bit on the Bulldogs Unleashed project, which is their major effort at this time.
Okay.
And that project is moving forward very nicely. There's 2 more months to the deadline for sponsorships, which is December 15th, and we're having a meeting first week in November to the last meeting we had in October, where there were already over 10 sponsorships and quite a few more in discussion. So I don't have the current number, but the project is moving along very nicely.
Nice. Okay. Friends of Batavia Public Library, Joanne?
The Friends held their sale last Saturday, if you remember what Saturday was like.
I think it was raining a little bit.
Most people had to swim to the library, I think. But
Good thing we're in.
regardless, I mean, I was astounded when I saw this number. They brought in $787
Nice.
on that day, when I thought nobody in their right
Nobody would venture out.
would be out. So anyway,
Yeah.
a couple of reminders coming up. Friends will have what they call a vintage book sale on the 9th of December. That's in this room, actually. Kind of take over this room. And it's older books. If you're a collector, you may find something that you're looking for there.
It's a fun sale.
It's a
Coffee
very
table books and
beautiful coffee table books.
older books and vintage
Older
paperbacks.
books.
And it's just all kinds of.
So that's the 9th of December. They also have a holiday sale that goes on throughout the entire month of December.
Oh, okay.
And that's in the corner
Oh,
book
right.
area.
Bookshelf area over there.
And
Okay.
what they do is throughout the entire year, they collect really fine quality books that have been donated, you know, no marks, nobody's name in it. And so it's a nicer selection of books that may be gift quality. So you might want to look for that. They'll also be selling their book lover calendars, so they'll be in that corner as well. And then I think I mentioned last time, All Hallows Read. Those coupons are for sale right now at the circulation desk.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
George, Link?
Well, we met in West Chicago. First Friday this month, we moved it up a week. And a lot of discussion about details related to the transition with SWAN and the mapping process, which is basically looking at all the circulation, all the patron types, and all the item types in the collection, and how those will map over to SWAN and as part of the migration. There will be a test load of the data in November to ascertain how that process is going, and that's quite a few differences between some of the details, you know, in terms of how some different, the libraries in SWAN are doing certain things, and the libraries in Link and Magic are doing certain things. But it's all, you know, all doable, and we're looking, you know, forward to that going live next May, in fact. And not a lot of discussion about dissolution, although that certainly is still, we're still pecking away at that. I think determining on the staff level in Link what records need to be preserved once the corporation is dissolved and once the organization is dissolved, and where those records will live that we are required to keep by law for a certain period of time, and all these kind of delicious little details that drive everybody crazy in this kind of a process. However, there is a relatively large reserve fund, and the number is not in my head right now, but it's well into the six figures that will be, once we're dissolved, will be distributed back to all the member libraries based on the percentage is built into the bylaws based on the relationship to the annual fees each library pays. So our percentage of the 8 libraries will be 14% that we will get back from this fund as sort of a kind of a windfall, that we can use for, and some of that money, there are some things, some costs we'll be paying less as a member of SWAN than we're paying now as a member of Link because of the economy of scale. But there are some things like some of our e-book subscriptions that we may need to use some of that money on because some of the discounts will be going away as that we have with Link that we won't have with SWAN for certain databases or things like that we have group purchases on that we may or may not have group purchases on as part of the larger group. So we'll have more on that as time goes along. We are no longer, as of the new budget, the budget year for Link begins May 1st, and so we're in the process of developing that budget. So there was the first round of discussions on that topic, and it's the strangest looking budget I have ever seen because there's not a lot in it anymore. The libraries, effective May 1st, will no longer be paying any fees to Link. So the last fee will be paying, I don't know if I passed that on, the last fees we'll be paying to Link will be in April of next year. Again, the migration will take place officially in May of 2018, and we hope that Link will be essentially dissolved by October. We may end up I guess we will have 2 audits that year, one for the fiscal year we're in now, and then one to close out the books finally and distribute any remaining assets. The biggest bugaboo we have is that there's some funds that are tied up in IMET, which is an investment pool in Illinois, and there were some issues with IMET, and some funds are in the process of recovery, and so we're trying to figure out, and we're working with IMET on what can we dissolve if we haven't actually gotten all the assets that are due back to our organization, that kind of thing. So little details like that, and we've IMRF, we're working with IMRF on how do you close out an organization that still has an employee or 2 in it, and we're working all those details out. So it's every meeting just has these little interesting discussions about what's going on. So.
Please remind me, is that seamless for patrons?
Yes and no. It will be, essentially, we have the same software, same searching, everything will take place the same. The difference is the way it will look will be slightly different because I'm not exactly sure how this is going to be presented, but right now we have 8 libraries, so you do a search and you have a certain number of results. We're moving to 96 libraries, so I don't know, have the Public Services Task Force been talking about this at all? So in terms of showing your library, our library is always shown first, but then it's a matter of which cluster of libraries I think will be shown next, rather, and then it goes into, I think, everybody else is alphabetical or something crazy like that. Do you have any thoughts?
I am hopeful about clusters of libraries. I do not have any information about that. I know that we will be shown first and it can default to us. There are some different things that we can do there, so people don't have to wade through a list.
Is that the only difference? The user interface is going to look identical to what it looks like now when I go in and do a search and I see what's available at other libraries. It's just going to be a matter of how you organize the ones other than Batavia.
It should be very close. There's some add-ons that Link has that provide value added, I think like dust jacket covers and things like that, we think that some of that will be part of SWAN, but we haven't. In fact, some work is going on right now to compare a SWAN library with what Link is doing.
So you mean the image of the dust jacket?
Yeah, things like, there's different things that we provide that I'm not sure how all that's going to come through, so.
Still put holds on?
Swan will provide the dust jacket images, but there are a lot of details that we're exploring, and we're actually working on that right now, to take a look to see if we're able to bring things more in line with the way we've been doing it, or if we're going to need to request into some slight changes. So that's being worked on right now.
Do you anticipate a patron education time period?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In fact, one of the things that the representative from SWAN at our Public Services Task Force meeting was talking about was they're working on some consistent branded information. So all the Link libraries and Magic libraries are going to be providing a consistent message about the change and about how that's going to roll out.
Will it change the app, the Boopsy app at all?
The Boopsy app will not change. That's basically pulling our data and then putting it into that interface. We'll just have to let the folks at Boopsy know the new source of data.
Yeah, I think starting in January, or even the December e-news from our library will have some information on this. Villa Park actually had, I don't know if you know this, Stacy, Villa Park, which is a Link member, needed some marketing information for something they were doing sooner than I think that what SWAN is rolling out. So they worked with SWAN to develop some information, and that's been shared, and provided that to Michelle recently for our marketing. So there'll be some, but there'll be more formal and rigorous type marketing going out to help patrons understand the process. But
The functionality stays the same. You can put a
Essentially-
hold, you can-
a regular library user can almost walk into any library and walk up to almost any
Right.
catalog and do a search. So in that sense, it's not going to be majorly different. A lot of what we're working on is really behind the scenes. So that's probably more than enough on Link.
Yeah, no, I don't think of all these details, but obviously there's a lot of things that need to be worked out to make this as seamless as possible for the patrons, so. And to minimize the number of headaches we're gonna have in-house here too, so.
It's such a tremendous asset for us to be making this change.
Yeah.
Because the amount of resources, I truly don't understand why there is any library of any size that doesn't want to be part of a consortium of libraries. Because the benefit of having, in this case, over 10 million holdings available to your local patrons is immeasurable. You know, the kind of resources that people will be able to find in a catalog search that they cannot find now. I expect it to have an effect, a significant effect on our interlibrary loan traffic. I expect to still, we have a remarkable community and the way that folks use the library. So I still expect to have a library loan. That won't go away, but it's just remarkable. So even very large libraries, like some of our neighbor to the south, which is our most significant reciprocal borrower. And by that I mean an enormous number of Aurora patrons walk into our library and check out books here. They would benefit from this because my experience is even the largest libraries end up being net borrowers because their patrons will find so much more that even a big library can't afford to own. So I think what we're doing in Batavia will cost us less and will be such a significant service improvement that I'm just really, it's worth the stress. But fortunately, the stress will be over in less than a year. So.
Nice, good. All right, thanks, George. Batavia Access Television? Rich?
Yeah, the coverage of a very successful regular football season is coming to an end, getting ready for both the playoffs and starting to think in terms of what's going to be happening during the basketball season. During the year, raised about $3,000 even after in addition to the original funds that were set aside or that were brought in associated with sponsorship, raised additional money during the season, about $3,000 more. And a lot of equipment was purchased to be able to continue on football as well as get ready for the basketball season. Other programs, just generally some music programs and so forth, but you know, the focus is on those two major programs, football and basketball.
Excellent, okay. Thank you. So those are committee reports. Next we have a couple of items requiring board action. The first is insurance policies.
Joe, could you join us at the table? There may be questions. You were distributed, you were given this evening a revised agenda item number 14 report because there were 5 numbers that were reported incorrectly, which have had no effect on next year's cost, but for accuracy. So those 5 numbers on pages 2 and 3 are noted with an asterisk. So that really is the only change in the revised report. I think the report is pretty self-explanatory. Joe solicited proposals and/or was approached by a large number of insurance brokers who wished to make a proposal to us. Largest group really in a decade. With the result as shown, Joe, do you want to say anything about this process?
There were a total of 5 other brokerage firms that contacted us beginning this summer. I don't know, it just came out of the woodwork, I have no idea what prompted it all. And then the current broker. I attempted to try and find an RFP. It would certainly have simplified life, but there's a Illinois Government Finance Officers Association in the state of Illinois. Even tried soliciting on that, and no response. So basically, provided everybody with our current coverages, indicated that's what we were looking for. If in their review they determined there were some things that might be appropriate as well, to go ahead and include those. And then got responses back, and then we did a compilation of the results.
The end result is a proposal to change our current broker and insurance provider from Butterworth Mamaga Agency in Batavia with Liberty Mutual Insurance to Cook and Coker Insurance Group in Park Ridge, proposing Utica National Insurance Group Insurance. And the savings is, compared to last year, is significant enough to make the change, we think. And we have been with Butterworth Mamaga for, well, as long as I've been here, I think, prior to my getting here. But Cook and Coker was very competitive. Utica Insurance, apparently, Joe, and I guess you would know more about this than I would, has been working in recent years to develop a package focused on libraries.
Correct.
And so they've come up with the ability, it's not an insurance pool, but apparently they've built up enough clientele in libraries that they're able to customize their product for libraries. And to the extent that, as I noted in the section on other factors, you know, the difference between the next lowest proposal and is $36, which is not much. But some of the other factors included directors and officers liability insurance and the treasurer's bond. which through Utica is not exactly a treasurer's bond. It's a different format that still is acceptable in Illinois, which they include in their basic price in the business package, but which is an extra cost from all the other proposals. So that when you do that, add those two other pieces of insurance in, which actually come due at different times of the year, the savings is over $4,400, which is actually really substantial for us.
So would you cancel that policy then with Buttery Wolf Dominga?
That would,
I would try. I don't know that it